Hello, today we're going to be talking about dealing with loneliness and focusing on why are people lonely and looking at some of the root causes of loneliness. There's a number of people we can think of from history that are famous but also lonely. So three come to mind: Michael Jackson, Princess Diana and Marilyn Monroe. And they made their loneliness known to the world. They were successful but yet incredibly lonely. So where does loneliness come from? Well, I believe there are roots in childhood, and specifically in frustrations and exasperation in childhood that lead to the development of schemas, which we'll talk about in a bit. And also there are ongoing triggering and perpetuating factors. For example, relationship conflict, whether it be in family or with friends. And then secondly, when there's a non-functional community, when you're not part of a functional community that's supporting and helping and building that social connection. If we look to the right of this diagram, we can see that exasperation, so traumatic situations in childhood, interactions, and that's typically between the parent, the caregiver, and the child, leads to core emotional needs not being met, and so again emotional harm, and then that gives rise to negative schemas. So developing these negative schemas or life traps is basically about core emotional needs not being met. And so children feel exasperated, they feel discouraged, and if this is repeated, then these life traps are more likely to develop. And then in terms of combining with how, as an individual with schemas or life traps copes with them, they actually become more pronounced rather than less pronounced. I'll give you an example. So we have this woman who looks sad and she's looking at herself in the mirror. What does she see? Is that a true reflection of herself? No. So why does she think she's so ugly? Is the issue with the mirror being distorted? No, it's really an issue of past trauma. And so for her, what was it? It was the fact that her father said that she was not as good as her sister. She was stupid, she was not good enough. And so she internalized these thoughts, she believed them, and they gave her a distorted view of herself, and also this will give her a distorted view of others. What's interesting about schemas is that they harm relationships. And so schemas combined with how we cope with them damage relationships. And so in terms of harm and in terms of relationships, we can actually look at relationships not going well, and one helpful thing is to think about, okay, are my schemas being triggered, or in that person are schemas being triggered? One author on narcissism, which is a disorder related to multiple schemas, says that this disorder is spreading and it's growing in today's self-centered world. In schema therapy, we're told that 70% of narcissists are men. Another common personality disorder, which is also related to multiple schemas, is borderline personality disorder. And this is associated as well with relationship breakdown. This, unlike narcissism, which has a tendency towards affecting men, this actually tends to affect women. So thinking about schemas, we might be thinking, which ones do I have? We know there's 18, and most people will have, 6 or 7 of these, and to varying degrees of strength that can either control your life or that we have them under control, depending again on the influences that we've had growing up. So if we look at the two sections in red on the left, these are the ones that are more associated with loneliness. So when our core emotional need of connection and acceptance growing up is not met, we actually feel disconnection and we feel rejection. And it's associated with 6 schemas here. And notice also that one of them is actually labeled social isolation and alienation, where we actually don't feel that we belong and don't feel that we fit in. And so you can see already, even if you are, if you have this particular schema, that you might be around people, but you actually still have the feeling inherently inside of loneliness. And the one on the bottom there is actually loneliness and isolation, and that's a domain on its own where we don't have a functional community, and so we don't have the social connection. They do say it takes a village to raise a child, and so when that's not there, when that village, that functional community is not there, then the need of effectively community, of intrinsic value, of that you're part of this community is not met, and so loneliness and isolation can set in. So I hope that was helpful in terms of thinking about, why are we lonely, think about some of the roots, but also thinking about some of the perpetuating, the sort of things that can lead us to ongoing loneliness in terms of the community and the need to be part of a functional community. Thanks for listening.